prisons. The assaults. There's no question that assaults have dropped dramatically in the Department of Corrections since 1996. 1998 is when Tamms opened, however. The predecessor of this committee, held a long series of hearings about the fact that the Department of Corrections had turned over large parts of the facilities to gang leaders. The gangs were running several of our prisons. There's no question that was true. Starting in 1996 and continuing through 1998, the system got control of that. They started operating their own programs, not letting gang members make cell assignments anymore, and not leaving it up to them. And those were things that were really happening. Gang leaders were making cell assignments. So yes, assaults went down. No one has ever shown that it had anything to do with opening Tamms, however. It had to do with the fact that they got, as Mr. Molina said, control over the entire system. We're spending a lot of money because they say Tamms works. And the other things you have to be careful about the assault figures, the department changed the definition of assault in the year 2000. What they have been unwilling to release are the much more accurate officer injury figures. Several people have tried to study this issue, and the department has refused to give it, including a group from the Southern Illinois University, has refused to give what other states provided, which was officer injury figures. Anything can be called an assault, but when an officer goes to the doctor for medical care after being assaulted, that's an objective fact which can be measured. They refuse to release them, and therefore there is no good data out there as to what the actual change in violence has been inside the prisons. It's gone down. I don't want to say that it hasn't, but there are no good data out there. He talked about education. Mr. Kennan was absolutely right. The only education at Tamms is a TV show, a GED program on TV, obviously not personalized at all, just someone talking, and then they give you a piece of paper which you can take the test. Somebody asked whether or not people turn that down. No, in fact, there's a competition among guys. They take the test, same test, over and over again to see if they can get 100. First guy on a wing to get 100 wins. But they never get a GED degree because they don't allow you to take the test at Tamms. They'll let you keep filling out the little forms, but they will not give you a degree. So you walk out of there with the exact same no education as you did when you walk in. All you've done is learn to fill out the same piece of paper over and over again until you get all the answers right. Even at the other prisons, and somebody mentioned Stateville, the last annual report they put out, and I'm sorry I didn't bring it with me, but I believe it was a total of 12 people got their GEDs out of the 3,000 people at Stateville in the last annual report the department has. It used to be, when I started doing work at Stateville, that there were hundreds of guys taking everything from auto mechanics classes to psychology classes taught by the local college, hundreds of guys in the GED classes, hundreds and hundreds of people signing up for the basic educational classes. In the last report that the department's made available, there were a total of 12 people who got their GED at Stateville. And it's not because of a lack of people asking for it, it's because they don't have the programs. They have cut programming throughout the system to the bone. The regulations as to who gets in there now are so broad, and I urge you all to read them, that they cover everyone in the system. It talks about you're a gang leader. It talks about that you made a serious assault, that is one that caused serious injury or death on someone, that you engaged in a dangerous disturbance, that you attempted escape. But not only does it say that, it says that you can have done any of those things, or that you plan to do any of those things, or that you might do any of those things in the future, or anything else. It's a very open-ended standard. So there's no set of criteria that they apply. And frankly, most prisoners aren't told why they were sent to Tamms. They're never told why they're sent to Tamms, because they don't get any kind of hearing. They don't get any kind of notice. If you were in segregation at Stateville, and somebody comes to your door and says you're going to Tamms, and you're put on a bus and you're taken to Tamms, you don't get a hearing. You don't get a piece of paper that says this is why we're sending here. You don't get any opportunity to say I don't belong here. None at all. If you weren't in segregation status, you do get a hearing, but all that means is you go before a panel of 2 people who work at Tamms, and you're asked, why are you here? This is out of Kafka. You're not told why you're here. You're not given a set of charges. You're asked, why are you sent here? And then you try to come up with something, and they say, well, how about this disciplinary report that happened 20 years ago? How about this disciplinary report that happened 15 years ago? What was that all about? You may not remember because, of course, you're given no advance notice that's what's happened. Those are the so-called hearings you get at Tamms. No one, after those first couple of months, has ever been sent back out of Tamms because of that hearing. Never. It's a total and complete sham. I urge you again to go back and read the 1993 report. Read the regulations that the department has put out. See if you find one word in there about renunciation. See if you can tell, based on that, who belongs at Tamms and who doesn't belong at Tamms, based on their own regulations. And I don't think any one of you will be able to say, okay, applying these regulations, these are the guys that are going to go to Tamms and these aren't.
Attorney Mills, if I may jump in here, I want to fast forward this because I want Deputy Chief Molina, and I see I have some questions here by my colleagues here, and after that I want the Executive Chief to come back and give me his summarization of things that been said by you and others, and I want someone from your group to do the same. And then we're going to follow that by hearing from one of the ex-prisoners. And I would like to wrap this up by no later than 12:30 for the Rushville Detention Center to come on next. But I want to thank you for your testimony, but it's something I want to quickly fast forward to you in form of a question. Are marriages allowed at Tamms?
There's no ban on them. I am not aware of any that actually happened, but I can't swear that they haven't.
Okay, thank you. So could you summarize, and then any questions by committee members? Okay, Riboletti.
You state that there are people who are not getting their GEDs. They take these tests. Have you filed any writs of mandamus or any Section 1983 actions based on that situation? And if so, what were the results of those petitions or lawsuits?
We have filed many lawsuits not on the GED question. The main lawsuit that is pending is Westifer, which we won in the Seventh Circuit, is now back in the district court, which talks about the lack of any standards for or any hearings as to why people are chosen to be sent to Tamms. That's our main litigation about Tamms.
And I guess the other thing too is you make an example that there's, and we use a lot of hypotheticals here, and I have a lot of difficulty using hypotheticals in this situation because there are inmates, they have very different situations.
Yes.
And so it's easier, and obviously you're not going to discuss this after the committee, but to point out to actual inmates that have had these situations happen to them, because otherwise we can make a lot of conjecture and innuendo about what's happening or not happening. And I'm an attorney by trade also, and we can discuss the merits of a case or not the merits of the case, but I can also tell you that I'm sure there are inmates that when asked about their gang affiliation lie.
Yes.
And along in Tamms there's absolutely not one person who's ever earned their trip to Tamms because of massive assaults or some type of murder or something along those lines. So I like to try to deal with actual facts, Counselor.
Right, and I gave you a couple of specific names. Obviously, I could give you more.
But the problem is I can't necessarily look at an inmate file to review the allegations that are being made, not only by yourself, but by others that are giving testimony today.
But my point wasn't that no one belongs at Tamms. My point is that there aren't any procedures in place to make sure we have the right ones at Tamms, that there is no procedure in place to figure out who is really part of a gang, who really are gang leaders and belong at Tamms, or at least for a period of time, and who aren't. And when you ask for that evidence, they say, oh, it's secret, we can't tell you what evidence we have. So, I mean, that issue is currently pending in our case as to whether even in court they're going to produce any such evidence. But certainly at those hearings, neither the person holding the hearing nor the prisoner has that information. And time again, the persons holding the hearing have said, well, we don't know what the truth is, but Internal Affairs says it's true, so we have no choice but to accept their word. We can't go against them and favor your testimony. And I understand that, and that was my point. The situation has been created so that they have no choice but simply to accept whatever charges are made, because there aren't real standards, there aren't real hearings, there's no opportunity from an objective basis to figure out what's going on with these guys.
You could also agree with me, or you could disagree, that there might be a situation where somebody's accused of being a gang leader. They can say they're not a gang leader, but the intelligence says something differently. But I think you and I both agree that there should be some type of procedure or hearing in place that can be discussed. I know the standards of proof are much different at those types of hearings, but I think that probably is fair to say as to there should be some type of hearing process in place.
That's all we're asking for. Exactly right.